Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it is January 10th, 2024, and today the topic is accidents on the homestead or in the farm or out in life. And Thea and I have been real busy. The last couple of weeks, we've been spending a couple of days away from home sourcing books. So yesterday we finished up with our last load, and yesterday there was something that went on yesterday, right, hon? What was it that went on yesterday?
My birthday.
Oh my God, it was Thea's birthday!
Yay!
Yay! So
I'm all about Christmas and birthdays.
yeah, I'm not. So anyways, what made me think about this topic is Thea and I both enjoy watching Outdoors with the Morgans. They're a pretty popular YouTube channel that really focuses on some storytelling, life events, things that just come up in Mike Morgan's mind at different times. And he spends a lot of time out in the wood yard. He's got an excavator, he's got a track loader, he's got tractors, he's got a relationship with Kubota, and he does lots of firewood as well. He does firewood starting chips, wax coated chips as well. So he's got and he's always doing some very interesting videos, and unlike my channel or our channel, he does a lot of professional video editing, so his videos are really great. But the topic about accidents, it made me really want to visit this topic, because he had mentioned that one of the people that he knows who's a logger, the logger's YouTube channel is Nuts 319. That's Nuts 319. And I believe it was last Wednesday. As a logger, I guess one of the things you always think about when you spend a lot of time working in the forest, doing dangerous things, it's we know that there's going to be an accident. Accidents happen all the time, and it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen, and how well prepared you are, and how well your system is set up for dealing with whatever happens when it happens. And I don't mean to be too vague, but I don't know much of the details yet. Now, Lauren, that's Pete's wife, did do a short video the other day, and very emotional. This is one of those life-changing events that happens when it's basically a near-death experience. So here's what I understand what had happened. So he's a logger, he's in the forest, he's taking down trees all the time, and there's all sorts of things, and I'll tell you some of my experiences in a few minutes. But we don't know what exactly happened. At least I don't know at this point what exactly had happened. I think Pete does recall from what Lauren said what actually did happen, but she wasn't ready to hear about just the particulars. So you got power equipment, you're out in the field, you got monstrous trees, dead limbs, all sorts of things. And what ended up happening, from what we believe so far, is one of the trees that fell, it fell on Pete, and it did a lot of damage. So the damage, some of the things that we know about it, crushed one of his kidneys, that he had to have the kidney removed. It fractured several vertebrae in his lower back and the lumbar region, the facets, those little bones that stick out to the side, and they needed to be fused. One of his legs at the knee, at least 3 ligaments were torn. What most people call them RACL, a ruptured anterior cruciate ligament. Then there was a ruptured posterior ligament, and also I believe that there was a medial collateral ligament, which would basically mean that you have 4 different main ligaments that hold the lower part of your leg to the upper part of your leg, and the front one being ruptured allows your your lower bone, the tibia, to move forward. When the rear one's ruptured, it allows the tibia to move backwards behind the knee. And when the medial collateral ligament, that's the one in between your legs, breaks, that allows your leg to go on out laterally like an L shape. And that usually does a lot of damage to the meniscus, which is that cushioning section, the little socket area that's cartilage. It damages vessels. It can damage the ligaments, the tendons as well. And really stretch the capsule, that fibrous capsule that goes around the knee. So he's had a fusion of his vertebrae. She also mentioned that there was the lactic acid was built up, and that's an indication of poor circulation. So when your blood isn't two things can happen: either you're decreasing your oxygenation, and there was one more thing. He had ribs fractured on both sides of his chest. So when that happens, sometimes you actually get what's called a pneumothorax, where air can get in around the outside of the lung sacs and inside of the rib cage, which can decrease your ability. You can get a hemorrhage that fills into the pleural space. That's potential space, I'll call it, around your lungs, inside of your chest. So you can have a pneumothorax or a pleural effusion. These are medical terms just to describe either air occupying space around your lungs or fluid like a hemothorax, blood occupying that space, which makes it much more difficult to breathe. Those things can happen when you have the fractured ribs, especially when there's a pretty significant blunt trauma. You don't need to have a penetration through the chest wall for that to happen. But it could be deoxygenation, or just not being able to breathe well or be able to exchange your gases. Or it could be decreased circulation. That could be due to blood loss or going into you go into a form of shock where your blood vessels sort of dilate. So the relative space, the relative fluid volume, your blood volume seems low, even though it may not be. Your blood vessels get a larger diameter. And it's sort of like taking 1 liter of water and pouring that into a gallon container or into a 2-liter container. It looks like it's only half full. That's because the volume the fluid volume hasn't changed, but the capacity volume has changed. So those things can happen, and that decreases when you get decreased oxygen going to the various tissues, your muscles and all. That causes lactic acid or lactate to be released, and they saw that was pretty high. Two things that were pretty fortunate for Pete. One, he's a young man, very physically active. Those two things are really, that's a very, very important thing, that he's young and physically active and in good physical shape. The other thing is that it wasn't during the summer hot months where there's a lot more oxygen demand. It was cool. I'm guessing 30s, 40s, somewhere's in there, the temperature, which probably resulted in cooling of his body and becoming hypothermic, which decreases the demand. Just like when people drowned in cold water, sometimes we can revive them better, have more success because their body wasn't metabolizing and using up all that energy and resulting in more systemic inflammation. So there's a lot of acronyms I could use to describe what goes on in the body in these situations, but long and short of it is Pete has had is an experienced outdoorsman, a logger, young and healthy, and it was cooler temperatures, and he had his phone with him, and he did contact 911. And I'll spend a couple of minutes talking about having your phone service set up. But that's all I know so far about what happened with Pete. And that made me think about sharing with you some of the things that I think are potential opportunities for accidents to occur. So what is an accident? An accident is an unexpected, unplanned event that results in either injury or damage or even a loss of life, that sort of thing. And the injury could even be a psychological injury as well. I've been real fortunate throughout my life. When I was really young, I guess you could say I was reckless. When I watch someone zip by me going like a bat out of hell when we're driving, now I think, oh, Christ, what an idiot. Then I think about I used to do the same damn thing. And so when you're young, you don't have the benefit of the experiences as you go through, as a result of going through life. So throughout my life now, I've had enough incidents where I really stop and think beforehand how to prepare for things or anticipate what can potentially go wrong. Like yesterday and today, right now it's calmed down, but we've had some windstorms, and we've had severe windstorms here in the past. In 2003, we had a severe ice storm that we got over an inch of ice on all the trees, and all the trees were either bent over or snapped and broken, and we were without power for about a 10-day period and all. And that puts a crimp on your life if you have a homestead, because you've got a well to run, you've got all, most of us have generators now. Now we've got redundancy with our systems, but I thought I'd share some other things that have happened. So I mentioned in the past that we used to have horses on the farm. So many homesteaders will have livestock around. So we've had chickens. We've had chickens just a few years ago, and you think about all the ways that you can fence in the area and protect them. And foxes can get in there. Coyotes can still get in there at times, even though you've got electric fencing up. Things do happen. The birds of prey, hawks and owls, can get them as well. So you can't completely eliminate unless you go to extraordinary circumstances. I mentioned that we had the horses, and you have your fair share of accidents or incidents that happen. We've had a horse, so a frost-free hydrant, I'll say what a frost-free hydrant is. We live in a cold temperate climate, so the ground freezes around here. So the base of our water line goes into a frost-free hydrant at about 4 foot at depth. You can still open up the open up the hydrant above ground, because it pulls a center plunger out from down below the ground. And so they got a nice little handle on them, a nice little spigot. You can lock the handle down. But one of our horses one time got her halter. We left her halter on when she was out in the pasture, in a paddock. And while we were gone, she had hooked her halter onto the spout where the water comes out of the hydrant. And that must have just flipped her right out terribly. She was all right ultimately, but she pulled the hydrant out of the ground, 4 foot buried in the ground, pulled out some of the hose, went through fencing. But it was an extremely stressful situation for her. It was stressful for us as well, but it had a lasting impact, and it took a long time to get her to be comfortable with anything around her head because she had such a stressful event. We've had times where horses have gone through fences and gotten injured. In our before our lower workshop, north lower workshop was a workshop. It was actually a horse stalls for brood mares. So there was plenty of room for a mare to foal, and big, heavy, 2-inch thick with 2-inch frames in addition. So the walls were actually 4 inches thick, but hemlock boards, really, really solid, and all pole barn nails, the old ribbed ones that we used back in the day. And those things were built extremely well. Well, one of the things that happened with one of our mares who was blind, who was a wonderful horse, wonderful brood mare. She got spooked a little bit. She was really, a blind horse is pretty amazing at what they can sense and how they can navigate. But something had happened, and she got up against the door. When the doorway was open, part of the latch, just 1 inch sticking out from the door itself, caught her skin, and she took off running. So it just made a large laceration down the side of her thorax, so the side of her flank. And so that prompted me to say, oh, I've got to totally redo all of the latches. And we had really carefully planned that barn and the stall construction based on experts' recommendations, and we discovered that. So there's probably, I could spend hours talking about many of the instances. When I was building that first barn, there was no additional workshop out behind it. So the barn ended, and the south face, it was all woods behind there, and it was quite a drop off at that time. I know the ground level is way up there now, but it was quite a drop off. And so we used to take the manure from the stalls and just put it out behind the back door, and I would move it afterwards. But all winter long there'd be a big pile, and in the spring until things dried up. And I was doing some work taking a sheet of T111, 5/8 inch plywood is basically what it is, and I had to put it up on and the peak of the ceiling is about 25 feet. The peak of the roof is about 25 feet tall. And so it was much higher off of the ground, probably 30 feet to ground level, but there was a big cushion of all of the manure that had been piled there. And I was taking a sheet of this textured 111, this plywood, up the ladder, carrying it up the ladder, a full sheet, and I had it so that it was, so I was holding it precariously. I used to just walk up the ladders without using my hands on the ladder. And I got up there, and a gust of wind picked up, got up underneath that sheet of plywood, and it just picked me right up off the ladder backwards. Fortunately, I didn't come down on the ladder. I came right down in the manure pile. Now, it hurt a lot. It stunned me. I was out of breath, but I didn't break anything. I was a young man at the time, really physically fit and all. But that was one of those first instances where I said, okay, I got to be careful with heights. Years later, in 1991, and you saw in the video where I showed a quick tour of the house, when I got to the second floor, I pointed out an I-beam above the cathedral ceiling, 24 foot high on the inside of the ceiling there. Well, I installed an I-beam that would make it easy for a little trolley on the I-beam to pick up big furniture and bring it up into the second floor. Because I knew that I wouldn't always be able to get it up there, and it's really difficult at getting anything big up the spiral staircase. Well, when I was installing that, I had the first 2 bolts in, not with the because it's a 6-inch I-beam, and I welded angle iron supports that would go up to the main peak. So it's a couple foot tall angle iron going up to the peak and attaching to each one of the rafters up there. And there are 4x6 rafters, hemlock, and I drilled through those and had the bolts sticking there, and had the I-beam, several of the bolts attached to the angle iron that support the I-beam. And the ladder wasn't the best ladder that I was using at the time, so it was a little bit wobbly because I had it extended so much. So I took my safety harness and I hooked it to the I-beam because I had a few bolts on it. The nuts weren't on it, but the bolts were there. And I don't recall right now what actually happened, but all of a sudden the I-beam broke free. I was still in the ladder, trying to hold on to the ladder. No way, with the weight of that I-beam breaking free and coming down and grabbing my my safety belt. It pulled me down. I think it snapped the ladder. I can't remember. But, I had a broken jaw. My right jugular was lacerated. I shattered my ankle, and I had a labyrinthian concussion as well. So I had no balance control. So that really affected me quite a bit as well. So you could say I was accident prone, all of these things happening. And there's times where when you're out clearing and all, working in the field, I talked recently in the video when I was doing snowblowing with the Optimus Maximus. That's a Kubota Grand L 6060. I used to have, and if you look back in some of the old videos, I used to have a Case 995 or David Brown tractor 995. Really great tractor, only rear wheel drive in it. It had a locking differential in it. Very powerful, no hydrostatics. This was all old school. This was 1974 tractor, and but I had a big heavy front end loader on it. And I've had trees before that were severely damaged and all, and I didn't have a way with an excavator. And some trees I would try to push the trees over with the bucket. And you can't always tell what the condition is of the top of the tree when there's no leaves on the tree. And so they had a dead top of that tree, and when I pushed it and I was started getting the tree to go over, well, the top stayed where it was and came right down on top of the tractor. Fortunately, I saw it coming, but with that tractor, it isn't like the one, there's no cab, and two, you have to climb over and sort of fit into the spot where you sit on the tractor. It's not designed like the tractors are nowadays, not nearly as safe. And I made my body squish down to the seat level and to the steering wheel level, and it crushed the steering wheel, put a big dent in the hood. And it was a dead white birch, so fortunately it wasn't a super heavy species, but it was probably falling from maybe 30 feet, 25 to 35 feet tall, and it came down. It was probably about this large in diameter. It did enough damage on the tractor, and I wasn't wearing a hard hat at that time. So I thank my lucky stars with that. I've had situations since then where I'm wearing my my good logging safety gear, helmet, safety glasses, full metal shield, my fanner one. I made a video about that, and that's absolutely fantastic. And you know, when I'm taking down some trees and dropping trees, you never know, especially in the forest, it's so thick and you have the big grapevines that are there. I've had times where the tree is everything's going exactly where I planned it to go, and all of a sudden a branch, even though the tree's falling in that direction, comes back and hits me on the hard hat and darn near wipes me right out. With the Hound, my older track loader, it's a Komatsu CK35-1, a real big heavy duty track loader. I've had times where, as I'm working, not even with a big brush mower on the front of it, where I'm just going through light small trees and all, and when the branch goes down, somehow another branch fell over on the surface of it, and as I'm starting to back up, it acts like a slingshot. And that was a time where I didn't have the front door closed down, and that came right through and hit me right in the face. It actually hit part of the excavator lower part, slung up and hit me in the face. I could have lost an eye in that situation. So homesteading can be pretty dangerous. People get hurt with chainsaws all the time, simple saws, pruners, knives, nail guns, and I'm sure everyone here is aware of the different incidents that I've mentioned. You know, there are many things that can happen on your homestead or on your farm when you're working, to the animals, to yourself, and all that. So one of the things Lauren did talk about when she was emotionally trying to update everyone who was concerned about what Pete's status was. One of the things she was talked about was the importance of having a very clear and concise way of contacting the people who can respond and be most helpful. Now, being a professional logger, he's out on someone else's property in the woods, and when he contacted 911, they were looking for him, but they couldn't find him. And fortunately, someone else was able to locate where Pete was. And loggers are out there often by themselves out in there. They'll often be checking in with each other. When I go out and back, Thea knows that if she doesn't hear from me by a certain point in time, or she doesn't hear the equipment running, to check and see what's going on. We've had conversations where you say, this is a scary what I'm going to be doing today. These are my concerns. I'll let her know about it, and so that she can make the appropriate calls and all. So having your phone, your loved one's phone, so you know who to call if the person doesn't pick up or whatever. Make sure that there's a way of communicating back and forth for family members, loved ones, friends, co-workers, whatever it may be, and know the people's names that are important to contact. So the appropriate things. So if in some cases I worked in Tucson, Arizona, knowing if the person who's injured has any previous issues, so like blood type, that's really important. Do they have any allergies to any medications or any other materials? Like I have an allergy to talc from years of working with latex. I have an allergy to latex from the latex gloves that you wear when you're in the clinics all the time. So it's always important to have a list of information, know the medications that each family member is on, or the person that's in the field. Say, oh, you know what, I think he's had a heart condition and he's on blood thinners. Well, that's really important for the emergency service people, the doctors, to know this, the emergency medical technicians that first arrive, the first responders, so everybody knows, and the information gets transferred along the way. And you, as the loved one who isn't injured, you have that list available because you're in a state of shock yourself when something like this happens. So you want to be able to have a written list. In this day and age, you can put it on Google Docs or whatever on your phone or whatever Apple has. So you can say, these are the nutraceuticals he takes, or these are the medications that he takes, or he has an adverse reaction to this type of food, or he's had a reaction to a vaccination, or he's had a reaction to a blood transfusion. And yes, he has had a blood transfusion in his past, or his blood type is such and such. Those sorts of things are really, really important. And I even like people to know anything over the counter that you take. Is the person taking aspirin regularly? Are they taking ibuprofen? About how much they're taking. These bits of information are critically important for the decision-making process that happens throughout the process of transportation and initial stabilization, and then ultimately the care that's given later on. Communication needs to be thorough from before an incident happens to throughout the time, and then make sure that when you first meet the doctors, the first nurses, physician's assistant, whoever it may be, that comes out and greets you and says, okay, we're trying to stabilize them now, say, here's a list of the things that I need you to know. These are the medications, these are the prior history and all. Has he had surgeries before? Does he have metal implants? And all of those things. So those are all bits of information to have. So those are things that I'm thinking about. Can you think of anything else, hon, while you're back there?
Not really. I mean, who to contact with the family, like relatives, you know, like our daughter if something happens, or our doctor's numbers and those
Yep.
type of things.
Yeah, your primary care physician, your internist if you have one, if you've got a cardiologist, whatever it may be, whoever those key people are that that have been involved in your medical care, though all of those names need to be given as well. And I do think for those who are pet owners, or if you have animals on your farm, in your homestead, really having a thorough medical history, the dietary history, all of that is important as well. You know, all of those things, and I know this is taking much longer than I'd hoped to go through this, but this is off the cuff, and I just wanted to share my thoughts on how to best prepare for those things that you're just not prepared for. Certainly situational awareness and experience is going to help to reduce the chances of an adverse event or adverse outcomes resulting for an incident that happens. Wearing the appropriate safety equipment, you know, knowing the difference from operating a new electric chainsaw versus a gas-powered chainsaw, and the safety equipment, because of the high torque in an electric chainsaw, it may eat right through your safety boots, your safety pants, all of those sorts of things. So I think I'll end it here at this point. Please feel free to leave comments and suggestions. Again, Lauren and Pete's channel, it's mainly Pete's channel, but Lauren's communicating and all with folks. It is Nuts319, and our hearts and soul go out to them during this time. It's devastating going through an event like this. It's shocking to say the least. And it is a long road to recovery, and we all need to learn from every situation, and that's what prompted me to think about making this video. So I hope everybody stays safe. Take good care of yourselves. We got severe weather incidents, really high winds going on here. You know the things that are going on in your neck of the woods. Be safe. Take good care of yourselves. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye now.